do you mean that the people developing the application should use their own applications, or that it should be good enough for other people to use it?
You can go either way with it. So when we originally thought about it, it is really probably internally, that's probably the less cost, cost you less money to implement something like that, where you actually have employees from the company utilizing it and really getting to know it and breaking it and finding all the pain points and things like that. But you could take it to the next level where you actually, recruit a set of folks to do that work.
Do you know of any existing efforts for the framework that you were talking about earlier, Carol, for the baseline, or either of you, but the one that Carol
I don't, and this would be a great forum for that to happen, but I really don't. And there's a lot of different ones, but I don't know if there's an effort to standardize them.
I think that the two things that are probably closest that I can think of is there is a lot of attempts at standardization around measures of user experience and measures of attitudes, but a lot of what we were really interested in was trends in behavior over time, especially because the cost of measuring attitudes in a study where measuring them in that study isn't valuable in itself, it's only over the longer term that it's valuable, that cost is too high, whereas if you can incidentally measure the behaviors along with it, it's a lower cost measure. And then the other thing that's somewhat similar is organizations that are like market research organizations that are tracking either self-reported behaviors on a larger scale or gathering data from carriers, that kind of thing. But a lot of those aren't really touching the things that we care about. It's like, uptake of MMS or something.
So another challenging question, but you may have the answer sitting at your fingertips. Can you give some examples of some of the standardized measures that you could imagine? Because you mentioned that there would be maybe something that may be across everything, and then there are some that are specific to things. Can you give some examples of either one, but especially the across, because I think that's the part.
Yeah, well, I think one would be sort of a measure of adoption. I don't know quite how you get at that, but how likely is this to be adopted? How much does this fit with an existing behavior? I don't know. I think it would take it would be an effort to take all of those possibilities and cull them down across domains and come up with sort of a goal.
Yeah, I think another example is thinking about kind of when and where technologies are used. I mean, that can cut across a lot of different types of these mobile studies, but it's still something that is probably generally applicable and could be useful in other domains as well. So yeah, we didn't really come up with a list specifically. I think we could have spent all day doing that. Yeah, but I think those are the flavor of things that we were thinking about, and the trick would be making it a small number.
I think another thing I was thinking of in the context of a lot of social applications, or in other cases, measures of just the distribution of either connecting with different people or different information sources, right? So how many different people is someone using this service to share with? What does that distribution look like? They've shared with these people 5 times and this person 35 times. I think that's a really basic thing to understanding what the dynamic is of a lot of social or communication-based applications. And that same kind of thing can be applied to something like a web browser. What's the distribution of visits to websites? And how does that distribution vary with place and time, I think is relative as well.
I think the things that cut across are on the micro level, as we just discussed, but they can also equally well happen on the macro level, like not what are the specific goals, but what are the typical motivations and habits. So one example would be what we called, I think, ritualistic use, which each of us have seen, in different small studies for different small applications. Like you're waiting for me, you want to just check, take out your phone, or you don't want to you want to signal you're not available for social interaction, you use your phone. So these are pretty constant behaviors, and if you have a way of tracking them as they emerge across individual studies, that would be very useful.
Related to ritualistic behaviors, duration of a single interaction with an application or service is really valuable. I mean, is this application used for 35 seconds at a time on average, or just what does that distribution look like?
I mean, that, for instance, might be probably one of those the best candidates for standardization, because I mean, we can everybody can have a clear picture of what adoption means. I mean, that particular case. But the other one you were mentioning, adoption of an application, I think is kind of I mean, difficult to.
Too broad.
Yeah, it's too broad. I mean,
Yeah,
what exactly means that? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's adopted, then you know, because somehow it gets the fame of the market. But I don't know. I mean, it's always, I mean, kind of controversial, because especially in many studies we conduct, I mean, we kind of trying to you know, kind of impose the presence of this application to our test subjects, and then we say, they like it. I mean, but then real adoption is a different thing.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to look at is it displacing something else? You had brought up sort of there was a deprivation study on mobile internet. They looked at, what happens if you take somebody's PC internet access away for a week. What do they do on the mobile internet? So sort of the idea of, what are you substituting for? Is it taking away from some other behavior? That's an interesting one. So, but yeah, they have to be specific enough and actionable, but general enough to apply across different